Hello, my little historians, and welcome to Lesson 833 on Shays Rebellion. One more time, this is you guys are in 8th grade. This is Unit 3 on the Constitution, and this is Lesson 3 covering Shays Rebellion. As always, the name of the lesson will always be across the top of the page. It will always be in bold. It will always be in caps. And then the name of the page will always be across the top underneath that. It will always be in italics, and it will always be underlined. The reason for this is that if you join late, then you'll be able to say, okay, what lesson do I need to go to? There we go, 833 Shays Rebellion. What page are we on? That's it. Bell ringer. Do now. So, moving on with the bell ringer. As always, you are expected to do this on your own. The main purpose behind the bell ringer is to refresh your memory about stuff that we have previously talked about, and also to make connections between what we have previously talked about and what we are about to talk about. So, if you remember, the previous lesson was all about the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. Now, as I have previously said, what you guys need to do is find your key concepts. So, if you find the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, then that means you can open up your perfect study guide, go looking for it, boom, there it is, how wonderful. So, I would highly recommend that you do that, and that way you'll be able to find the correct answers for all of this, and it will also be building a little map in your brain, connecting Northwest Ordinance to Articles of Confederation, Shays Rebellion, Constitutional Convention, so forth and so on. Moving on, let's go ahead and advance to the next slide where we start reviewing the Articles of Confederation. Now, if you recall from lesson 831, that's where we did that little hand exercise, we talked about how the Articles of Confederation was America's first national government. Now, we'd previously talked about how the national government that we had before was the king and the parliament, and we didn't really care for it because the king taxed us without us having any representation. The king was oppressive. There was taxation without representation. There was an army that not only did colonists have to house and feed, but also they shot at us during the Boston Massacre. All of these things that were going on that we really did not care for under the king's government. So we fight the American Revolution over no taxation without representation. We win the American Revolution, and now we are saying, okay, fantastic. Now we're going to have our own national government. So the king's national government was too strong. So this time around, we are going to have our own national government, and we're going to make this deliberately weak. So the way that this works is that, like I said, this is the national government. This is the government for the entire country. And the way that you should think about this is that the national government is the adult, and the states, those are the kids. So if the national government is the adult and the states are the kids, under the Articles of Confederation, there was a weak national government, and it gave too much power to the states. So that means that I want you to imagine a teacher says, I'm going to step outside for the next hour. What's going to happen when that teacher comes back? Will all of the kids be doing what they are supposed to be doing, completing their assignments, working quietly, so forth and so on? Of course not. When the adult steps away, then that's when the kids get into trouble. They're going to be doing whatever they want to do and completely ignoring the adult, or they're going to be getting into fights with each other. And that's what we're going to talk about. Now, when it comes to the specific weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, the big deal is it is a weak national government. But how is it weak? That's why I want you to remember no pact. No PACCT. No president. What is the point of the president? If you remember, I used my pointer finger because this is the leader finger. Are you listening to me? Shh, etc., etc., etc. This is the finger that gives you directions. So if I do this, you know that I'm telling you to get out of the room. The whole point behind the president is that he is the leader of the government. Right now we're having an election because we are trying to decide what kind of leader do we want in our government. But there is no leader for our government. Our government is leaderless. And since there is no national government, that means that the states are just doing whatever they want to do. So that's a problem. There is no army. So if there is a problem like enemies from natives or enemies from Britain or enemies from, internal problems, there is no army to settle it. There is no army to defend the country, and that's going to be an issue, and we'll find out about that in today's lesson. There is no court system to settle disputes. If you remember, I talked about the thumb. This is the judgment finger. Good, bad, indifferent, so forth and so on. There are no judges. If you have a dispute with somebody, you want to take it to somebody else. You take it to mom and dad. You take it to the teacher. You take it to Dr. Robinson. You take it to Judge Judy. And in all of these cases, what happens is both of you lay out your side of the argument, and then the teacher, the parent, Dr. Robinson, the Judge Judy, they give their opinion of what is fair, what is right. And that way we settle disputes without violence. But since there are no courts to settle disputes between states, between citizens, or between citizens and their states, then that means that there is no peaceful way to settle these problems. And that's a big, big problem. We'll talk about that during today's lesson. There is no currency, which is not exactly accurate. It's that there are 14 different types of currency. Now, currency, if you remember, is paper money. So if you go between a country, you're just going for a couple of weeks, so you're going to change your American money for whatever that country's money is. If you go to Mexico, you get pesos. If you go to Europe, you get euros, and so forth and so on. The problem is that there are 14 different types of paper money. So they have 14 different types of value. And so other countries don't want to do business with the United States, so the United States is going broke. And that's a big problem for several reasons. Another problem is that no taxes. If you remember, I talked about the ring finger. It's called the ring finger because that's where you put the ring. Rings are valuable. There is no taxes. Like I said, the national government is so weak that it tells the states, give us some taxes, and the states just don't do it because there are no consequences. Just like if your teacher said, I want you to complete this assignment is not for a grade. Is anybody going to do it? Of course not. That's exactly what's going on here. The national government is so weak that it says, please give us some money. And the states are going to say, no, I'm going to keep my money. Thank you, though. So those are the big problems with the Articles of Confederation. It is a weak national government. These are some of the ways that it is weak. And then all of these problems are going to Shays' Rebellion is just going to shine a light on just how big all of these problems are. So let's go ahead and get started with Shays' Rebellion. So think about all the problems that I was just talking about. Now imagine that you are a farmer in Maryland. You own an orchard. That's an apple farm. In the 1780s, you sell apples, you sell apple pies in the market, people pay you with paper money. That's not unheard of. You guys have seen paper money. You guys might have paper money. But now the tax collector says you have to pay your taxes, but you have to pay your taxes in gold. So, does anybody at home right now have a bunch of gold or silver that you can use to pay your bills? If you go get a cochinada after school, are you going to pay for it with paper or are you going to pay for it with gold or with silver? All of y'all are going to say, well, paper. I don't have any gold or silver. Yeah, and that's the problem with all of these farmers. Because when a tax collector says pay your taxes this way and you can't pay it, what's the tax collector going to do? He's going to seize your property. He's going to throw you in prison. Even though you are trying to pay your taxes, except the tax collector won't take your money. Is that your fault? No, of course not. So you and all of these other farmers are furious. And let's also keep in mind, this year is 1787. The American Revolution ended in 1783, just 4 years ago. So all of these farmers, these were the people who fought during the American Revolution. All of these guys are veterans. They were trained. They objected to taxation without representation. They objected to this oppressive king. And so after they fought the American Revolution, now here is an oppressive government that's going to take their land from them. Is that fair? I don't think so. And that brings us to Daniel Shays. Daniel Shays, like I said, he was a farmer and he was a veteran. He served in the Continental Army during the American Revolution. So he lived in Massachusetts. The government was trying to take his farm from him. And keep in mind, when the government takes his farm, it's not just, okay, now I'm homeless. Okay, now I have no way to support myself. Okay, now I have no way to make money. They also took away his right to vote. So once again, this is taxation, and then when he can't pay the taxation, they're taking away his representation. Not okay. So he tried to pay his debts with continental dollars, but if you remember from the No Pact, continental currency, continental paper money, was worthless. Nobody wanted it. So the government said, if you're going to pay your taxes, the Massachusetts state government said, if you're going to pay your taxes, you have to pay your taxes in gold or silver, not with paper. Except Daniel Shays doesn't have any gold or silver, so the government is going to take away his farm. But not just that, they are also going to throw him in prison. Stupidly, if you owed money, what they would do is throw you in prison until you paid it back. That's dumb, because if you are in prison, you can't work, therefore you can't pay it back. But that's the way that the system worked. So, one more time, here are these farmers. They are struggling to pay their bills. They're trying to pay their bills with this paper money, and now the government is saying you can't pay with paper money, you have to pay with gold or silver. You can't pay with gold and silver. We are taking away your land. We are taking away your way to earn a living. We are throwing you in prison, and we are taking away your right to vote. Now, ordinarily, if a citizen has a problem with their state, they can go to court and sue the state, except under the Articles of Confederation, there is no national court system. So, there is no way for the farmers to sue their state. And if you remember, I said we need a court system, we need judges, because that's how we settle disputes without violence. Well, there is no way to settle disputes without violence. So, Shays and all of his friends start a rebellion. Like I said, they all served in the Continental Army. They all have army training, so they start fighting back against the Massachusetts state government, and then the New York state government, and then the Pennsylvania state government. They start fighting back against all of these state governments that are trying to imprison people for all of these problems. And like I said, if there are a bunch of soldiers or a bunch of farmers who are taking their guns and then fighting against the government, what should happen is that the government sends out the army to stop them. Except under the Articles of Confederation, there is no army to stop them. So, how does this rebellion going to end? What happens is it doesn't end for a very, very long time. But the main thing that you have to understand is that Shays' rebellion is basically shining a spotlight on all of these problems under the Articles of Confederation. Like I said, there is no president to give any direction. So the states are just doing their own thing. Massachusetts might do one thing, Pennsylvania might do another thing, but there's nobody to coordinate and say, we are all going to do this. As I said, there is no army. So here is Shays' rebellion, and under the Articles of Confederation, there is no army to stop them. There are no courts. One more time. If there was a problem that is completely unfair, like what Shays was looking at, the whole point is that he could go to a federal court to sue the state so that he could settle this problem without any violence. Except he can't do that because there is no court system under the Articles of Confederation. This started because he had paper money. He had one type out of 14 different types of paper money. And the government is saying, we're not taking paper because it's worthless. So he's like, okay, I've got all of this paper money, which is completely worthless. I don't have any gold. How am I supposed to pay my bills? And one more time, there is no way to collect taxes. So under the Articles of Confederation, the national government won't collect taxes, but the state government is. So the state government is the one that's collecting all of these taxes, seizing all of these farms, and imprisoning all of these people who owe money. And that's what brings all of this to a head. Because all of this is happening because the Articles of Confederation, our national government, is too weak. And Shays' Rebellion has several examples of this. And that's what the big problem here is. It's not just oh, we better fix that. It's oh no, it is actively broken now, and now the whole thing is collapsing. So for your independent assignment, over here you can see that you've got these individual examples of what we were talking about. So as an example, farmers fight against the state government. So what problem under the Articles of Confederation does that refer to? Well, what that's saying is that there is no army. So there is no army, and that's how farmers fighting against the state government is a problem. So for the rest of your independent assignment, I want you to complete this by yourself. Farmers can't pay their taxes with continental dollars. Which of these problems leads to farmers can't pay their taxes with the continental dollars? States are unfairly imprisoning debtors. Which of these problems are being caused by a weakness in the Articles of Confederation? Fairly straightforward. Just drag and drop. So, as I was saying, the main takeaway that we need from Shays' Rebellion is that this was a big old wake up call. This rebellion is caused because there are so many weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation, and they are all, it's not just oh, we should fix that one of these days. It's oh no, this system of government, this national government, the Articles of Confederation, they are collapsing. So, the message that everybody understood here is very clear. The Articles of Confederation are not working. This national government cannot work. It is too weak. So, everybody comes to the same conclusion. We need a new national government. We need a national government that will be stronger. And that brings us into lesson 834, which is the beginning of the Constitutional Convention, when they throw out the Articles of Confederation national government and instead begin writing the new Constitution. So that's what we're going to be talking about with lesson 834, the Constitutional Convention. For your exit ticket, as always, all you guys got to do is just drag this little black dot to whatever the correct answer is. One more time, what I would suggest you do is go through this sentence and identify your key concept. So when you identify your key concept, what you are looking for is the idea that you learned in a social studies class. What weakness of the Articles of Confederation did Shays' Rebellion reveal? There are two big ideas in that sentence. Once you find them, then you'll be able to find your answer more easily. Same thing here. Explain the cause and effect of Shays' Rebellion. Once again, two key concepts. Cause of Shays' Rebellion, effects of Shays' Rebellion. Which one is which? As always, I don't want you guys to just try and guess. How do you find the answer for this? We just learned it just now. All you guys got to do is just go through this again, and then you can answer your exit ticket. It's very straightforward. So, thanks a lot, guys, and I will see you with lesson 834, the Constitutional Convention. Take care.